stuck my screen. What the
This frame is the FlowZilla from Killadrones, which is a nice New Zealand quad store. Good blokes there, and has been test flown extensively by Propaganda FPV. This frame has some really interesting features. One of the features is this little locking plate right here that is just a little key that locks the arms together in the middle, and in fact has a little captive nut to keep everything just all perfectly centered and really stiff for some wicked freestyle. And has some other nice features as well. It has some captive stack screws, which I really like, on the 20x20. You don't have to have that. You can file out the gaps here to allow you to push the heads of the stack screws through the bottom of the plate. But I actually prefer them to be captive, so I'm not going to be filing out the plate. If you do file it out, just make sure you keep it wet when you're filing it, and that will stop some of the carbon from getting up in the air and in your lungs, which you really don't want. If you need a tutorial on how to file down carbon, there's plenty available, so go look them up. Don't just do it blind. Do actually look up how to do it. Okay, so how do we assemble this thing? First off, what we're going to do is we are going to take 4 of the long screws, stick these long screws through the outermost corner. And the reason we're doing this is so that when we locate the arms, they will stick there, and we're not going to have problems when we try to later stick it all together. So once we've got those through, and the arms, these 2 arms are the Deadcat arms, the long ones. These 2 arms are the standard arms. If you've ordered the standard build instead of the Deadcat build, you'll get 4 of these. But they all have the same connector, they all work the same way. They are interchangeable. If you want to change from Deadcat to standard, just order 2 more standard arms, or vice versa, order 2 Deadcat arms to move to Deadcat. How does this work? Well, this little key plate has these little sort of spanner looking connections. So you can see that it connects in there, and what we do is just connect that on. You can tell this one's a bottom plate, by the way, because it has these 2 slots here for the camera mount to go into, the camera side plates. Next, we'll do the other Deadcat arm, then the 2 standard arms, push down, make sure they're all nicely locked in. That's the start of the build there. Next step is you want to get the standard lock nuts, and you will want to get one of the push-in captive nuts. And the reason we need that is for this key plate in the middle, you actually need a captive nut in there to make sure that when you put the center screw through, it secures everything really tightly in place. So now that we've got that all set up, what you're going to need next is your 4 lock nuts there and your mid plate. So the mid plate has 2 sides. It's not like the bottom plate here with the camera that has the slots in it. This one actually has a captive nut side and a not captive nut side. You can tell because it's got a little indent there. So you want to make sure that the captive nut side is up, because we're going to be putting screws through to get into the captive nuts. To make sure, if you are going to be using the captive stack screws, so if you're not going to be filing out that bottom plate, then those screws, those stack screws, need to go through now. So they go through from the non-captive nut side. Now for the 30x30 option, if you're doing 30x30 stack, then you can just use the stack screws all the way through. You don't need to worry about putting these in first off. You can put them in later. Once we've done that, just put this down, get it in place. There we go. The next thing to do is to stick these lock nuts just finger tight. Doesn't need to be super tight, just tight enough to hold the frame together while you turn it over. Cool, easy. Now, all we need to do at this point is get the rest of the captive nuts and screws through. So I start off with the edges. So put in the press nut. What I need to do next is grab some of the medium screws, so not the small ones, not the large ones, and not the stack ones. Stick that through. Use hex driver. Done. Don't need to make it tight. Just get it in and rinse, wash, and repeat for the other corners. So this last screw, bolt, don't forget this is going through the key in the middle as well as at the end. Once you get to this one, tighten it down and then do the rest. Opposite corners. Cool. And then once you've done those ones, use a 5.5mm hex driver to just get on top of these bolts. And that's it for getting the base plate and arms all together. So next step is that we need to get the standoffs in. One of the things you want to do is make sure that you use the medium length screws for the standoff in the center front. So not the longest ones, not the stack ones, the medium ones. You should have a couple left. So just stick that through from the bottom there and screw one of your large standoffs, not the smaller ones, they're for the back. The large standoffs down onto that. So now what we'll do is put the rest of these front standoffs in. There are here 1, 2, 3, 4 of these standoffs to go in. And for these standoffs, we'll be using the short screws. Again, as with all quad building, you really want to make sure that these are just finger tight. Don't over tighten these. When you first put them in, you just want them to be sort of there. Don't tighten it up until all of the other pieces of your frame are actually in place. This will save you from having incorrect alignment when you put in other ones later. So just don't do it. Cool. So that's our long standoffs done. Now we will switch to our short standoffs. Now for the short standoffs, these are going in the back, and we will need 4 of these as well. Cool, so again, short screws for these. This is the 20x20 stack in the back, so don't try and put standoffs there, you'll be disappointed. If the screws won't go through, just use a driver. Sometimes the tolerances on the carbon mean that you just need to screw them through the carbon. That's pretty much just a thing that happens, and then just secure it with the short standoff. Now the reason that you got the short standoffs in the back is because otherwise the heights will be wrong. So next. Easy. So now I've got all the standoffs installed. It's time to look at what goes on next. Normally you would get your camera sandwiched between the 2 front camera plates, then mount it in, just because it makes it easier to install it. You could do it the other way, but why would you? What you do here is plates the correct way around. Cool, so just rock them in. The slot will be a tight fit. That's by design. If it wasn't a tight fit, then it would flop around and you would get jello. So it needs to be tight. You just rock it in and you'll get there. There you go. Cool. And really, really simple. There you go. So the main thing is to get that nice long screw in the bottom through the thick plate. One of the things I really appreciate about this frame is that because it has those 3 standoffs right in the middle, that's where frames tend to get a lot of crash forces in their top plates, and their top plates being quite thin. That's where a lot of breakage happens right here. But because you've got the nice long screw on the bottom and it's a well supported standoff in the middle, and you've got the split between the front and back plate, all of that shear force is distributed out away through the standoffs through to the nice thick bottom plate and arms. It's a nicely thought out design. Next up is the last piece, which is the top plate. So we'll just screw that on and then we'll have a look at this frame. Right, bit of tightening up all the screws, and this is a really tidy, really spacious, but nice and compact and strong Freestyle frame. It's got the nice back 20x20 mounting, 20x20 or 30x30 option for the stack. Nice unblemished top carbon, only has enough room for your straps there, couple of extra holes for air and potentially antennas, accessories, all that sort of stuff, and yeah, it's a really versatile, really strong looking frame. I'm going to be building this up, and we'll see exactly how strong it is. I'm going to be wanging this into all sorts of trees, and we'll see how we go. All right, thanks Killadrones, thanks Propaganda, great frame. I'm going to have a lot of fun building in this. Peace.